So listing all of the tasks you have to do is just the first step. The second step is that you need to understand the timelines it takes you to execute each task, which task must come first before the next one, which task is independent of almost all the tasks, right? And then in the order in which they need to come for you to have a smooth transition from the beginning of your project to the end of your project. Bear in mind one of the major terminologies you should look out for. It's called a critical path. Now, the critical path is the shortest possible time that your project can take from the very beginning to the very end, right, without having to have any unnecessary delays and unnecessary lag. For example, the independent events, right, like for example, constructing the wardrobes and the furnishing can actually start on the day you start digging for your foundation. So if that construction of your carpentry is going to take like, let's say, 2 weeks, we can start the construction of the carpentry early, especially when we have good measurements. We can start the construction early while every other thing is going on, so that as the construction of the carpentry is done, we will just simply bring it on site and install it where we need it. We don't want to wait so much time waiting and waiting and waiting for events that, or for activities that that doesn't necessarily, that could have actually been done earlier than now. So let's move on to the next step and let's see what we need to do. So the next thing we need to do, having listed everything we need, is to start setting durations for each of these activities. Now, these durations are listed in days. We can start from pegging and digging of foundation should take 1 day. Pouring the foundation should take around 5 days. It's actually 1 day to pour the foundation and 4 days for the foundation to set. Then iron bending for the column reinforcement should take 1 day. Then building to DPC level should take 3 days. Casting German floor should take about 2 days. Then building the walls to window level should be about 7 days. Then the construction of the form work for the lintel should take 2 days. Iron benders reinforcement should take about 1 day. And the installation of the lintel reinforcement should also take 1 day. Now, to cast the casting of the lintel should take around 4 days. The building to roof level should take around 2 days. The roofing should take about 5 days. The first stage electrical work should take about 4 days. That's where we have to do the piping. Then the plumbing work should be about 5 days as well. Then digging the soak away should be like 3 days. And to install the security doors should be about 6 days. Plastering should be about 5 days. Stage 2 electrical fitting should be about 5 days as well. Oh, okay. In between stage 2 electrical, I think we need to add wall tiling. We need to add wall tiling in between. So let's just do this. Insert task. And inside this new task, we would have wall tilings. Wall tiling should take about 5 days or so. I guess it should take about 5 days. Then the POP should take, no, I think wall tiling will take a whole lot longer than that. Wall tiling should take a whole lot longer than 5 days, but this is the breakdown we have. Okay, stage 2 electrical fittings also needs to come in here somewhere. Okay, so the POP should take around 7 days. The floor tiling should probably be around 10 days. The installation of doors and windows should be about 6 days.
The installation of protector should be about 5 days. Should take us about 5 days to install the protector. And the painting should be done in about 12 days. The kitchen wardrobe will be 7 days. And the interlocking tiles should be 14 days, and finally the handover should be done in 1 day. All right, so now, first and foremost, on the right hand side of the chart, this is where, of this page, this is where we are trying to construct what is called the Gantt chart, right? Now, you can see for each, this Gantt chart has different lengths corresponding to the duration of each of the activities. You can see pegging is 1 day, which is just only on Wednesday. Pouring of the foundation is 5 days, which is a whole lot longer, right? And iron bending is 1 day, which is also short, the same size with the pegging and digging of the foundation. So now, the next thing we need to do is that I would like us to, first of all, set up these predecessors, right? These predecessors tells us which activity should come first. Let me just move this a little. For example, we cannot build to DPC level without doing the pegging and digging of the foundation and the pouring of the foundation, right? In fact, we can't even pour for the foundation if we don't dig the foundation. So the predecessor for this activity of pouring of the foundation is pegging and digging of the foundation. So let's start setting them up. So the predecessors for this, if you click on this small drop down, they show you all the activities. You just simply choose which one is your predecessor activity. So let's select pouring of the foundation, right? You can see your Gantt chart is adjusting, right? First of all, we had an initial, okay, let me just take it back. This was what we had before, just very hazy, unordered activities. But once we set this up and define this activity as our predecessor activity, we now had this change when we click outside here to this. So it now has a definite start date, definite end date, and it shows this small arrow that bends from here to here, which means this activity must finish before this activity will start. If for any reason we move this activity, the start date of this activity, the rest of this activity should move, but we'll get to that in a bit. Iron bending. So iron bending is not really a serious activity. It should be done sometime within the project, but not necessarily it must be finished before this pouring of the foundation. So let's just leave this iron bending activity as the start date, or let's just leave it at pegging of at this activity 1. So it just gives it some kind of initial timeline. We can even drag it here, right? But let's leave it. Let's leave it where it is. So building to DPC level, what predecessor do you think should work? Now, before you build to DPC level, we should have at least poured the foundation first. So this is activity 2. You can see it here. So we'll come here and define activity 2, which means we must pour the foundation and the foundation must dry before we start talking about building to DPC level. And you can see what we have here. At the end of this activity finishes first before this next activity begins. So let's do the same thing for all the other activities. Casting of the German floor has to be the same thing. We must pour the foundation first completely before we cast the German floor. Actually, I think before we even build to DPC level, the German floor should have dried. So let's change this to 5, casting of the German floor. No, let's take out 2 and leave it on 5. So here's what happens, right? Once we pour the foundation, we will need to build to DPC level first. my apologies. We need to build to DPC level first before we pour the foundation. So I think this pouring of this foundation should come after we build to DPC level, which is 4. Let's just take out the excesses. Now, building the wall to window level. Building the wall to window level, we must build, in fact, we must finish the foundation, casting of the German floor first before we start building the wall to DPC level. So let's go and select casting of the German floor as our prerequisite. Now you can see over at the right hand corner, the Gantt chart is slowly evolving. We are slowly setting it up, and all of the activities are gradually just setting themselves up. Okay. Now, construction of the formwork, right? The carpenter constructing the formwork. We have to build to deep window level first before he can construct the formwork. So, which means we have activity 6 as our prerequisite. The iron bender constructing the lintel, it doesn't really matter, right? The iron bender's construction of the lintel does not really matter. It can come anytime as long as it comes before it will be used, before the installation of the lintel reinforcements. So let's say before this day, the iron bender should have finished his work. So let's not give him too much time. Let's put him somewhere here, right? Let's just put him somewhere. Let's just say we can put him somewhere around after the German floor has been done, right? So after the German floor has been done, then, or no, let's leave him as close as possible. Let's put him on building to the window level. So as he's finishing on this day, right, his rods can now be used for the construction of the lintel. Again, the construction of the lintel, installation of the lintel reinforcements doesn't need so much prerequisites. Let's put them on the same timeline as well. Now, the casting of the lintel, it has to be done. The casting of the lintel has to be done before the carpenter must first construct the formwork before the lintel can take place. So we'd have carpenter constructs formwork. Once it's done, then we would now use, of course, we've built to window level. We would now use what the carpenter is constructing together with the blocks that have been built to window level, and we would finish up the pouring of the casting of the lintel. Now notice that these two activities, right, iron bender constructing the lintel reinforcement and installation of the lintel reinforcement, all of these takes place before this next activity, which is the casting of the lintel, which is when you get to pour the concrete into the lintel. Now we put it at 4 days, because if the first day we do all the pouring, then the remaining 3 days will allow the lintel to dry before we can now continue the building upwards. Next is to build to roof level, and of course, you don't need any magic to tell you that you have to first of all finish the casting of the lintel. And the roofing, obviously, the roofing comes in after you have finished building to roof level. Now, when you finish the roofing, the next thing to do is to do a stage 1 electrical work. Now, the stage 1 electrical work is going to be done after the roofing, which is 12. Stage 1 plumbing work can also be done simultaneously after once the roofing is done. Sorry, my apologies. Once the roofing is done, then digging the sock away. Okay, we'll come back to digging the sock away. We don't need to dig the sock away just yet. We need to dig it much later. We'll come back to it. Now, installing doors. Let me just shade this. Let me just shade this entire line yellow so that to remind us that we'll come back to this digging of the sock away. Now, to install the doors, windows, and security doors, we would have to have probably around when we finish the plumbing is when we can start it, because at the end of the day, we would need to do a plastering, and the plastering is going to help to hold it all down together. In fact, we can even start installing it immediately after the roofing is done, right? So while the plumber is working, once the roofing is done, the plumber is working and we are installing the doors and windows, especially since it takes about 6 days to do. Now, the plastering is where we are going to now fill up all the errors where necessary, and the prerequisite for this is that we should have installed the doors and windows first. So let's install the door frame. So this is the security doors. It's not necessarily internal doors. It's just the security doors, the entrance and exits. Now the stage 2 electrical fitting is where we now get to do before we do the stage 2 electrical fitting, we need to add in here, let's insert a task and say stage 2 plumbing. Stage 2 plumbing is going to take us around 5 days. Now the reason for that is that the stage 2 plumbing will be things like the fittings, the kitchen sink, the showers and the bathroom, the bucket in the toilet, and all of those. So the stage 2 plumbing should come after the doors and windows, the door frames and door and window frames have been done. So we just use activity 16. Installation of security doors. Then the stage 2 electrical work. Before we get to the stage 2 electrical work, okay, we have tiling here. The tiling's prerequisite is we should have finished stage 2 plumbing. We should have finished the second stage of plumbing before we do the tiling. Then the electrical fittings, second stage of the electrical fittings should also come around when we have finished the second stage of plumbing. Now we'll start the POP. The POP should come after the electrical fittings are done, which is electrical fittings is 19. This is now 19. Then the floor tiling. Remember I told you we are going to leave this sockaway. Now this sockaway, is now time for the sockaway to come after the POP has been done, right? Now a builder recommended that after the POP has been done, then we can now start digging this sockaway. So let's go and select our POP as a prerequisite here. Now we can now take off our yellow shadings because we are done with that activity. Now, the floor tilings. Before we do the floor tilings, the POP should be done. And POP is 21. Let's select 21. Then we'll now install the doors and windows. The installation of these doors and windows are now for internal doors, room doors, and all of that. And then windows as well. So that would be, before we can get that done, the floor tiling should have been completed. Then we now install our burglary proof, which will also be done with the floor tilings, which also be done after the floor tilings are done. And then finally, we now paint. Also the same thing. Once you finish with the floor tilings, we now start painting where necessary. And then finally, as we go down the project, we now have to install the kitchen cabinets, and that should be done just after the protector has been installed. And we install the interlocking tiles after the floor tilings have been done. So the interlocking tiles can now be running concurrently with many of these other services. For example, installation of the kitchen cabinets and wardrobes, while the painting is going on, and all of that. So, and finally, the handover is when everything is complete. Now, notice that as we continue to fill out these our predecessors, right, our Gantt chart has evolved, drastically evolved, right? It has evolved from a simple Gantt chart, right, to a full-fledged, complete Gantt chart where everything is now all laid out. You can see all our activities are now spelled out, laid out properly, laid out very, very well from the very beginning to the very end. You can see in this case, we have 3 activities running concurrently at the same time, which is piping of the electrical work, plumbing, and the installation of the door frames and security doors. The same thing also happens here, where we have plastering and the plumbing all taking place at the same time simultaneously. We have the second stage electrical fitting and wall tilings all taking place simultaneously, because most times some of these two vendors may need to work together, right, so that they would make sure that everything flushes and there will be minimum issues. Now, while the POP is going on, my apologies, this digging of the sockaway should come when the POP is taking place. So let's go and change this to activity 19. So while 19 has been concluded, we'll start digging the sockaway. Change this to 19. Okay, now here's what happened here, right? You can see we've changed this to activity 19 and we'll still have this sockaway here, right? Now, what we are going to do now, I want to change everything in this place to manual mode, to automatic. You get? Now, here's what we are going to do. Let me just start from this guy. I will just simply come here and change this manual schedule to auto schedule, right? So this auto schedule now brings this activity back here, right? Now, part of the disadvantage of this is that if you leave everything on manual mode, then you would have to be setting the dates manually. But what I usually prefer to do whenever I have a project is that I will leave I will just set almost all of my activities on automatic mode so that they just follow themselves. And when I make one small change in my project, everything else just follows like that as you see it. So let me just quickly switch everything to automatic mode, auto mode, so that we will not have so much issues. Just a second. Almost done. Well, there's actually an easier way to do this by just coming to click here, or better still, I can just hold down my shift key, click on the end, from the beginning to the end, and change this to auto schedule. But it's a good thing for you to understand how to do them manually, one by one first, before you use the shortcuts. Just in case you want to know what I did, I just came from here, held down my shift key, clicked on the end, it selects the entire activities. I can change them to manual, or I can change them to auto. As I change, you see this icon change automatically, as you can see here. All right, so now I can change this. I think I should change this to auto schedule first. So all I need to do at the end of this project would be, once I just define my project start date. Now watch what happens to this Gantt chart. Once I come and say that my start date is, for example, 30th of July, everything else just moves to 30th of July. You can see everything in my Gantt chart just moves automatically. It makes things very, very easy for me. So if, for example, my initial projection was that the activity was going to start on the 9th of July, for instance, and as a result of delay of releasing of funds and something else, the project did not start on that 9th, I can just come back here and change the start date of my project, and I will now get everything now just automatically changes according to what we are doing. Now, in order for us to set a work day to include Saturdays, right? So we want to set our work days to include Saturdays and Sunday. Now, before we even go ahead, just watch what happens. For this particular activity, pegging and digging of foundation, it's 1 day, so which will be done on a Thursday. But for this activity of pouring of the foundation, which is 5 days, it takes Friday as this. It will take Friday, Saturday, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, if we count only the work days, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Friday, which is 5. But we want to also include Saturdays as our work days, right? Now, to check whether this has worked, we would, okay, don't worry, let's move forward. So we want to include Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays as our work day, and exclude Sunday as the only day where we would not be working, which is common to the construction companies in Nigeria. Now, here's what we are going to do. In Microsoft Project, we will go down to Projects, click on Projects. We will do Change Working Times. Now, we can just simply leave this standard project, this standard, which is the project calendar, and come and simply change work weeks to what we want. So now Saturday is usually set to non-working day, but we want only Sunday to be our non-working day. So this is what we are going to do in our calendar. We click on Sunday and set it to a non-working day. Then from Monday to Saturday, we will change the specific hours. Let's change it from 7 a.m. in the morning to, let's say, 4 p.m. Now, actually, the construction workers usually work 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. plus or minus, but let's just leave it at 4 p.m. just to give space for some flexibility. Now, you can see that on Sunday, we have only Sunday grayed out, right? And being grayed out here, according to our legend, shows that it's a non-working day. Saturday is not grayed out, so from Monday to Saturday, they are not grayed out, and those are our work days. So we click on OK, and our chart adjusts automatically. You can see Sunday is the only day that has this orange background color. Now we can change this background color by simply double clicking here, coming down to non-working time. Make sure we have our calendar set to standard projects. Then we can change this color to anything that we want. Let's leave it at a very light orange. Okay, there we are. All right, now we'll solve that problem. Now you can see that our project has now arranged itself from the very beginning to the very end. From all we have to do is to select the start date of our project, right? We can actually come and select the start date of our project by setting up project information. We'll just simply define what the start date is. Let's say we can say the start date can be 14th of July. And once we click on OK, everything just, okay, now we'll have to continue and move the task before the start date. Click on OK. Now everything now moves down to 14th of July. You can see this is July 13th. Okay, let's just move this to July 14th. Aha. Now you can see the start date is now July 14th, which is a Tuesday, and all everything else has just adjusted until we get the entire Gantt chart has adjusted until we get to the very end of the project, which is the handover.